2 hours. So today's meeting will be somewhat truncated. We have a couple of witnesses, but I do not believe we will need the entire 90 minutes. We'll probably go through one complete round of questions with our witnesses, and then I'll take about 5 minutes at the end of the meeting for some very, very brief committee business. So hopefully that meets the approval of everyone on this committee. Now, to our witnesses, you've probably received these instructions before, but in case you have not, let me say that when you are speaking, please make sure if you are speaking in English, you are on the English channel. For those witnesses who may want to alternate between English and Francais, I would suggest if you start a statement or answering a question in one of the two official languages, complete your statement or question or answer in that official languages. Please do not switch back and forth between French and English, because that causes problems for our technicians. And with that, I ask you to make sure that you speak slowly and clearly so that our interpreters can hear your statements and we are able to give proper interpretation. Now, Angela, I will ask you, I do not have at this point the speaking order of our witnesses. I wonder if you could introduce our three witnesses. My understanding is each of them will have a brief 5-minute opening statement. If you can just inform me of which of our witnesses is first, I will introduce that witness and then we'll commence. And colleagues, we'll go to our normal round of questionings, which will be 6 minutes for the first round, 5 minutes for the second round, and then 2.5 minutes for the last round. Angela, who is our first witness?
Mr. Greg Thompson of Charity Intelligence Canada, and he's accompanied by Ms. Kate Bahan, and Mr. Thompson will start.
Thank you. Mr. Thompson, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon. My name is Greg Thompson. I'm Director of Research for Charity Intelligence Canada. Charity Intelligence is itself a charity, one that analyzes Canadian charities to help donors be informed and give intelligently. Our website hosts free reports on more than 780 Canadian charities and provides insight into specific giving areas such as the environment, cancer, and homelessness. Last year, 314,000 Canadian donors used our website for information on Canadian charities, reading over 1.3 million charity reports. We estimate that our research helped inform and influence $95 million in Canadian charitable giving last year alone. Just as democracy depends on informed citizens, the fundamental health of philanthropy rests on well-informed donors. Our own research supports this case. In surveys of donors who have used our resources, 77% said that Charity Intelligence reports have improved their confidence in giving to charities and have inspired these donors to give 32% more money to charities. Over the past few weeks, a significant amount of information has been reported about We Charity. TI has focused our analysis and remarks on WE's financial position, how it spends its money, the results it achieves, and its governance issues. We report fairly and consistently based on our analysis of hundreds of Canadian charities. We do not let unsubstantiated allegations impact our ratings, as we strive to remove subjectivity and report on objective measures. At Charity Intelligence, we are analysts, not auditors. As well, we are analysts of charities, not government programs. Our specialty is looking at how charities spend money and what impact their programs achieve. It's within this context that CI presents to the Standing Committee on Government Operations and Estimates today. With that, I'll pass it over to Kate Bain.
And
Hi.
put our next, yeah, thank you.
Hi, my name is Kate Bain, and I'm sorry I'm having technical difficulties here. My computer's gone on the glitch, so I'll have to just do my speech, my opening comments from scratch. But my name is Kate Bain. I'm a managing director at Charity Intelligence, and I did the updates on We Charity's report in August of 2019, and more recently, this July 2020. So I'm happy to take your questions about that. I would just like to use these moments to talk to you about what is going on in the charity sector. And one of the greatest concerns is how charities are so negatively impacted by COVID-19. Imagine Canada estimates that individual giving to charities will be down by between $4 to $6 billion. And for context, in 2019, individual giving was about 17 billion. And on top of this, we have the we situation that is in the headlines every day and is really shaking donor confidence in giving to charities. The impact of this, we won't know. And I appreciate that part of the Canada Summer Students Grant Initiative was to help charities, and that students would be volunteering and giving their time to help frontline charities at this time. For many charities, volunteers are an incredibly important part of delivering program delivery. But what charities really need now is cash. And we're in August, and so far there has been so little response to the needs of Canadian charities. There is one simple thing that we believe at Charity Intelligence could significantly help Canadian charities, and that's called the disbursement quota. The disbursement quota is a little known factor about how much foundations, community foundations, and endowments are required to give of their assets to charities each year. Currently, Canada's disbursement quota is 3.5%. Canada has the lowest disbursement quota in the world. In the US, the disbursement quota is 5%. And there are calls right now in the US for raising that disbursement quota to 10% for the COVID pandemic. If Canadian charity and foundations and endowments and community foundations were to increase the disbursement quota from 3.5 to 5%, we estimate that would be an additional $700 million going to charities this year. It is completely at our finance minister's discretion. It is written within the CRA regulations that the finance minister can change the disbursement quota by the stroke of his pen. So I ask all of you from all parties to go back in caucus and talk to your parties about what we can do to help Canadian charities for the COVID pandemic. And I ask you to seriously consider raising Canada's disbursement quota to 5% at least for the COVID pandemic. Thank you.
Thank you. Angela, do we have another speaker, or have we concluded our opening comments?
Yes, Gail Pico from the Charity Report.
Thank you very much, Ms. Pico. The floor is yours. You may have to unmute your microphone.
There.
Perfect. We
Okay.
can hear you now. Yes.
Great. Thank you, sir. And thanks for the invitation to appear in front of you today and giving me the opportunity to make this statement. I'm not specifically sure why I was asked to appear, but I'll share with you some of my background in the charity sector. I've worked for 35 years in the sector, starting with an 8-year stint as a counselor in a shelter for abused women. During the past 25 years, I've worked as a consultant to over 100 charities, advising them on fundraising and governance, impact and relevance, accountability, and transparency. For the past 10 years, I've written widely about the charity sector. My 2017 book was called Cap in Hand, and my forthcoming statement specifically related to the government's partnership with WE. And the first is the question of whether WE was the only group with the capacity to execute the CSSG. And I believe that this conclusion is not an unreasonable one. The government had already had some success in getting COVID relief delivered through partnerships with charities. In April, it gave $100 million to 5 national food security charities for emergency food relief. Shortly after, 3 national charities were tapped to channel $350 million to vulnerable communities through the Emergency Community Support Fund. But students as a group are a difficult cohort to reach. And we had student engagement, youth engagement as its mission. with connections to 15,000 schools across the country. I believe at the time that would have been seen as a plus, as post-secondary students, particularly in racialized neighborhoods, remain connected with their high school. The organization was also able to showcase its reach. Young people filled sports stadiums in 15 cities around the globe for annual WE Days. WE ambassadors were A-listers from the world of entertainment, politics, civil society, and the corporate world. They were supported by everybody that mattered. Board members of WE included senior bank executives from Scotiabank and RBC, sophisticated people with long resumes. Additionally, WE's finances, governance, and unique structure were independently and favorably reviewed by two of the most well-known law firms in the country, Torys LLP and Miller Thomson, as well as former Supreme Court Justice Peter Corey. All three founders of the organization had been awarded the Order of Canada. Additionally, Craig Kielburger had received 13 honorary degrees and doctorates. Mark Kielburger was selected as the World Economic Forum as one of the 250 global leaders. Roxane Joyal, a Rhodes Scholar who clerked for the Supreme Court of Canada, also received an honorary doctorate. In 2018, the charity had 380 full-time staff and a budget of about $48 million. To anybody from the outside evaluating WE, their qualifications would appear to have been unique and unassailable. In fact, the organization was able to generate 35,000 applications from across the country in 9 days. 35,000 young people whose stories have been lost now and whose hopes are on hold. The second point I want to make is around the ideas that charities don't spend money on speakers for entertainment, for fundraising events. Nothing could be further from the truth. While charities try to get speakers and entertainment or anything they can donated for an event, entertainment is typically part of an event budget. In 2002, the Hadassah Wizzo Children's Charity paid former US President Bill Clinton $100,000 to speak at a sold-out fundraising dinner in Toronto. And the late socialite and philanthropist Ana Maria de Souza most certainly paid the 70 Brazilian dancers she flew in from Rio de Janeiro for the iconic Brazilian Ball in Toronto, which at its peak in 2010 raised $7 million in one evening, and where, according to Toronto Life magazine, everyone who was anyone in the world of politics or business and media attended. The reason charities pay for speakers and entertainment is because there's a lot at stake. The days of the lemonade stand is over. Every year in Canada, charities raise more than $20 billion from fundraising activities, and they spend several billions of dollars in order to accomplish that. Yet even with that amount of money, government, all three levels of government are still the primary source of funds for charity. In 2017, government supplied 70% of the $280 billion that flowed for the charity sector, which leads me to my third and final point. The charity sector is the primary means through which government executes healthcare and social service priorities. It employs 2 million people on a full-time basis and 2 million people on a part-time basis. Every day, millions of people rely on the services provided by charities. And as a consequence of the COVID pandemic, more people are becoming reliant on charities, not less. In a world full of uncertainty, Canadians are suffering through the worst crisis in modern history. Their lives have been turned upside down. Many don't know how they're going to manage. The anxiety is making some Canadians sick. Others are becoming hopeless about the future. The situation is dire. At the same time, the people who have been elected to help Canadians through the good times and the bad, some of whom are now serving as the loyal opposition, have created a crisis of their own. By transforming the weaknesses of one charity into a vehicle for an intractable partisan battle that is currently taking up the agenda of 3 parliamentary committees, including this one. The charity sector is flawed and needs to work on many problems, such as better governance, inequity, and systemic racism. Yet the increasingly partisan behavior coming out of the House of Commons is like a herd of bulls in a china shop, destroying everything in its path as it reaches for the most expensive piece of china on the top shelf, presumably a snap election that could potentially defeat the current government. You've invited me here to speak to you. My recommendation to you now is that you snap out of it, because the broken glass on the floor of that china shop is the collateral damage being inflicted on the charity sector, its employees, and the growing number of people the sector is trying to serve. And as a citizen and someone who has worked all of her professional life to address the needs of the most vulnerable people in society, I cannot overstate how deeply disturbing I find this agenda. And I'm happy to take your questions.
Thank you very much. We'll now go into our 6-minute rounds of questions, starting with Mr. Elbutev. Mr. Elbutev.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair, and thanks to the witnesses. I didn't expect to hear a political speech from Ms. Pico, but I have to go to Mr. Thompson and ask the following question. Is there usually a scrutiny for charities to respect official languages?
No idea.
Is there typically scrutiny when charities do not respect both official languages? Is that your question?
Yes, I'm asking about official languages. Is there usually a scrutiny for charities to respect Canada's Official Languages Act?
It would depend upon which jurisdiction they're working in. I would imagine, certainly, if charity working nationally, you would expect that they would have the ability to operate in both official languages.
Well, that's fantastic. You've answered a part of my question, which is going to be the next one, is that if an organization or a charity to take on a project nationwide, that organization needs to respect the Official Language Act. Is that correct?
I do not know the law on that. I do know that We Charity did have some French-speaking folks on their payroll. I understand that some of them may have been let go, but that's all under review right now.
So why then the We Charity have hired a Quebec organization to take on the operation, if they have the capacity?
Well, I do believe that We was weak in Quebec. I mean, they had an office there for about a year. I believe they closed it down in February, their office in Montreal. So it was not an area of strength for them in the country, certainly. But they have also reported that they were going to hire PR firms in other jurisdictions to help them as well with the program.
So that means they don't have the infrastructure to run a program in Quebec or in the French-speaking cities in Canada.
From what we can see, that they were somewhat weaker in Quebec. Certainly, that's all that we know.
Well, if they're weak in Quebec, and the French language, they must be weak elsewhere where the Acadian community is quite established. Do you agree with that statement?
I'm not sure I can necessarily say that they must be. No.
Okay. Are you aware of organizations in Quebec that they will be able to take on projects as such that the We is going to take on, and within full capacity, they're able to deliver the program properly?
All we know is that they were going to be hiring national to operate their program throughout Quebec.
But if you can assist me to I'm not interested in naming names. You don't have to name organizations. How many organizations you are aware of that you think they'll be capable to handle the same WE project in Quebec?
How many other organizations would be able to handle the project in Quebec?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I don't know the nature of significant number of organizations in Quebec to be able to answer that question.
Okay. What about Mr. Behan? Will she be able to assist us on that?
That's an excellent question, and that would require due diligence to do. That would be part of the government's looking at the program and looking at what the mandate was for the program, and that would be part of any granting initiative. I haven't done that work before, so I can't answer that question.
Okay, so the process to select an organization, you mentioned the due diligence, and the French-speaking community between Quebec and the rest of other Canadian cities, probably about 25 to 30% of the total Canadian population. So it's a very significant number of people that they need the attention of program that was going to cost us $912 million. So you guys, I look at you as an expert in this field, and to understand the status in the French-speaking cities and provinces. It's quite important of a feedback to us to be able to understand why any given organization would take on a national project that must have that infrastructure to be able to deliver the project properly to all Canadians fairly and equally as it's supposed to be. So do you believe that it's a requirement for an organization to have that national scale program, the eligibility to be able to carry on this program does speak for an infrastructure, a proper one across the country? Is that correct to suggest such thing?
Well, I would say that for the government, having a student grant program for Francophone communities was a key priority. And it was part of their proposal. And it was something that they asked We Charity about. And it was one of the key priorities. So it was very important to the government in assessing the capacity of organizations. And We Charity, I believe, from what we've heard, said that it had the capacity in Quebec.
We'll have to unfortunately interrupt now because we're at the end of our 6 minutes. We'll now go to our second 6-minute intervention, Mr. Johari.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the witnesses for your testimony. I'm sure that you are representing the charities and the impact that COVID-19 has had on it. Let me start with CI. I understand that your organization was established in 2006, focused on researching on charities to help the donors. In your opening remark, Mr. Thompson, you indicated the number of 780 charities that you have researched. As a clarification point, are these the one that you've researched since 2006, or are these the one that you research on a regular basis annually and generate the reports?
We now have probably, I think, 760, 780 charities that we've analyzed in the last 2 to 3 years. So they're ones that we regularly update.
Perfect. Can you share some of the key criteria, although you touched on 3 in your opening remark, but can you list the research criteria that you use and how that translates into a ranking for the charities?
Sure. So we look at a number of things. We look at financial transparency, how transparent the charity is with its financial statements. We look at donor accountability, how well the charity reports on what it does, how it spends money. We look at some financial metrics to make sure that they aren't spending too much money on fundraising and administration. we look at something that we call program cost coverage to see how much cash a charity has sitting around on its balance sheet, whether it would be able to continue to fund its programs for 8 years or 2 months.
A lot of it is financial focus rather than delivery focus. Is that fair to kind of summarize?
So,
No.
but our fifth and newest metric is what we call demonstrated impact, where we go dive into each of the programs and try to understand what value those programs.
Perfect. How many of those 700? And please feel free between Ms. Bahan and Mr. Thompson, to jump in anytime. And I'll get to you, I promise, Ms. Pico, in a couple of minutes. How many of these organizations of the 760 or 780 that you mentioned are specifically focused on empowerment program, whether it's for youth or for, let's say, for example, indigenous or for visible minorities? How many of these organizations are focused on those type of support?
I'm just searching that, Greg.
Pulling that up, Kate?
Yeah. I've got 180 on youth.
Okay, so great. So you have, I assume, as part of your criteria, and you have a list of these organizations. Okay, these organizations, how many of them are specifically focused on delivering programs such as the program that we talked at the national level?
I think my understanding, and I only read the contract like you read the contract.
Yeah.
My understanding is that it was a concierge service, online platform, matching students who wanted to volunteer with charities, any charities, food banks, animal shelters, hospitals. So it was an online platform. It was innovative. It was out of the box thinking. It was a new pilot project. So was it done by any other charity? No. Apparently, no other charity does this service matching, online tutoring, mentoring, concierge service.
Okay, so out of the 100 that you roughly talked about, because of the method, because of the platform that we are, it was, as you suggested, as you indicated, the We Charity looks like it got uniquely qualified. Is that a fair statement to say?
I wasn't aware of We Charity doing this work before either.
Okay.
So it was brand new territory.
Okay. So have you ever, during the last 3 years, as part of 780, evaluated We Charity vis-a-vis the empowerment and vis-a-vis program delivery?
Yes. Since 2011.
Okay, and as far as program delivery at the scale of national, I know one of my colleagues highlighted some of the areas that was a bit challenge for them. But how would you rank them?
We rank them low impact.
And and what was the driver for you ranking them low impact?
Greg, on the low impact, it was the domestic programs was average.
And domestic program, for my simple language, means their ability to be able to deliver something at the ground level. Is that what you're
within Canada?
Within Canada,
as opposed to its operations in developing countries. So,
okay.
Yes, we found its operations within Canada were fair, and its operations internationally.
Yeah, I only got about 20 seconds, and I want to ask a couple of closing questions. Did a Government of Canada at all reach any of your organization, whether it's CI or whether it's the charity report, to get your feedback around any organization, including We Charity?
No.
Or We Structure? Okay, Ms. Pika.
We are completely out of time,
Thank you.
Mr. Johari. We'll now go to Madame Vignola. 6 minutes, s'il vous plaît.
Merci beaucoup. J'aimerais simplement souligner que l'interprète qui vient d'embarquer, son micro est excessivement mauvais, ça griche énormément. Mes premières questions vont aller...
My first questions go to Mr. Thompson and his colleague. You conducted an analysis of We Charity. which I have before me. And this document contains a lot of data. How much time did it take you to compile these details and publish them?
And we're getting this. Some people say, how can you analyze a charity in 2 days? Because that's what this one
Non,
took.
excusez-moi. Le son.
I'm sorry. The sound is very bad. In the interpretation, I'm not even hearing the voice of the interpreter. The sound is so poor. Can something be done? I'm sorry.
Just for a second, I won't charge, Madame Vignon, I won't charge you any time. We'll see if we can get our interpreters or our technicians to clarify this. Just give us a moment, please. And Angela, if you can check with the interpreters to see if they can try and give some higher audio levels en français for Madame Vignola.
Maintenant, celle qui parle, c'est parfait.
Now I can hear the person who's speaking very well. I don't know if it's I'm...
Merci.
Thank you. So my question was that you published a report on We Charity, and I was wondering how much time it took to draft the report, compile the information, and publish it.
As it's come up, how much time we spend on charities. We have models, and they're now automated, so they will upload to the website. And so to do We Charity, from the moment we received the audited financial statements to when the report was published, was 2 days. Some people say, how can you do a charity in 2 days? When you do 2 days in 2020 and 2 days in 2019 and 2018 and 2017, that time, over that period of time, there is accumulation of knowledge. And in addition to that, we have management interviews, we have management discussions, we have ongoing communication with charities. So to do this report took me 2 days in July of 2020. But that is, a whole accumulation of years of looking at We Charity.
D'accord, je vous remercie.
Thank you for your answer. Your report raises a number of red flags, and I would like to know whether they were obvious in the overview analysis or whether you had to sort of dig deeper to find them.
They were obvious. They were in black and white in the audited financial statements.
Okay.
Okay. And these red flags, were they sufficient? If the government had taken them into account, should the government have known that We Charity was not the best option to administer this program?
Testimony of the government on Tuesday, and the government is lucky. You're going to get your money back. We has generously promised to repay the $30 million. Donors, when they make a donation to a charity, don't have the same recourse. So the due diligence we do maybe has to go deeper. So in the government's due diligence, it didn't use the audited financial statements. It was looking forward at the program design. So different people will use different types of due diligence and for what is most appropriate for their needs.
Okay, so the government can get its money back, but not necessarily donors? Is that what I understood? Is that not a new red flag that you just raised?
When you make a donation to a charity, if the program goes off track or runs into problems, donors don't get that money back. That's so a donor takes on 100% of the risk when you write the check to give to a charity. And that's why at Charity Intelligence, we've been doing due diligence for donors since 2007.
Okay.
Okay. We're trying to see how much diligence was carried out at the Finance Committee, Ethics Committee, and it's still not available. You were able to publish a report in 2 days. That's a report that seems to be done. Everyone talks about it, but no one's seen it. Is it normal that everyone is talking about this report and no one has seen it when you yourself were able to publish a report in just 2 days?
The report has been on We Charity has been read by 30,000 people in the last month. So,
Oui,
I mean,
mais je
you
parle
meant
du
the government's
rapport de
report.
diligence du gouvernement, pour le gouvernement.
Yes, the government's report. Thank you.
So,
Donc, est-ce qu'il est
different
normal
people's
que tout le
notes
monde
will
en
be
parle? Mais
published.
Is it normal that everyone is talking about this report but no one has seen it?
Keep their notes to themselves or not. So, I don't mind.
OK. On peut sentir là peut-être.
Okay, there might be a transparency issue then. I would like to know, well, you spoke with Mr. Jawari earlier, and I'd like to hear about the factors that you assess in your reports. If you have recommendations to make, because in the auditing process, because that's what we're studying, the verification process, the grant awarding program for this $900 million program, We Charity has organized a lot of events for people, but it was also going to be managing $900 million. Can you assess the organization's capacity, or what would the recommendations be?
Intelligence, we look at transparency and accountability, which is 60% of our overall star rating. And we do the financial analysis, which is 40% of the star rating. We look at a charity's results. And one of the issues with We Charity's results, let's say we're looking at how many schools it's in, it gives us a number for all schools in America, Canada, and the UK. We do not see a breakdown of how many schools it works with in Canada. We do not have that detailed information on even the number of schools by province.
Madame, I'm going to have to unfortunately interrupt you now, but I would ask, since we're completely over time, I would ask that for the remainder of your answer, if you could provide that testimony in writing and direct it to our clerk. That way we will be able to distribute the full answer as quickly as possible to the rest of our committee members. But we'll now go to Mr. Green for 6 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses who've made themselves available today. I have had the privilege of serving for the Hamilton Community Foundation here locally. As a former city council, I've been involved in our local enrichment fund, which gives out millions of dollars annually. And so I'm curious through you, Mr. Chair, to the Charity Intelligence folks, if they would care to comment what their processes for adequate due diligence are for their clients. What does that mean?
I provided it in the opening statement, so it's on the record for the for your committee.
So then, for the record, there's been a number of red flags that you've raised publicly in other places, and I'll recount them, and then you can comment on them. Huge real estate holdings, highly unusual for a charity of this nature. Large amount of debt. Debt is constantly changing.
No.
If I can just finish, and then you can comment on it. You can refute it or not. Debt is changing. We has been in breach of the bank covenants on its debt for 2 years. in 2018 and 2019. Through the auditor, says the bank had waived these covenants. Me2We's app, their past app, was a failure, and it's no longer available. Potentially, it was sold to the We Charity for $1. I still have the question on where that loss went. 6 board members of the We board resigned in March, including their board chair. They're replaced by 4 new directors, one of whom has since resigned. The new chair is essentially, he's a former high school teacher, so I'm unsure about where the professionally qualified independent board of directors are. Me2We, the for-profit, is supposed to generate funds for the We Charity, but it appears that funds are flowing in the opposite direction without proper transparent disclosure. And KRP LLP, as has been noted, is the only auditor We has ever had, and it is the only charity, as I believe you've claimed publicly, that KRP audits. So I'm going to break that down now, and then you can respond, and then we can go from there because I only have 4 minutes left. So on the real estate holdings and the debt, would you care to comment on the real estate holdings and the debt?
Sure, absolutely. Charity Intelligence, we are financial analysts. We are research analysts, and our research is objective and impartial. On the real estate holdings, we see no red flags there. We see many charities across Canada, YMCAs, universities, hospitals, camps having significant real estate holdings. That was nothing that Charity Intelligence ever drew a red flag to.
These are points that have been drawn. Large amounts of debt, you would agree?
Not in relation to its equity, no. So relative to its real estate, what we reported was that there was a breach in bank loan covenants. We did not say that it was overextended. We did not say it had poor credit. I think it's really important to be accurate with what is reported and what is not reported.
So what was reported today is that they're looking at selling some of their assets. Would you care to?
Charity Intelligence did not report on that. We do not do real estate. I do not know what their listings are in the Toronto market.
So given their position as the online pilot project, you identified that they had no previous history in this. Yes. I would agree. They did have an app though. Do you have any comment on the failure of their past app and its transition from what appears to be the for-profit to the charity?
The We 365 app is in the audited financial statements, and it is immaterial when you're looking at a $60 million charity.
Okay. Relating to your due diligence, you talk about transparency and accountability. I'm to assume the accountability would be to the board. Would you have?
No. So we define accountability. So when you talk about boards, that's governance.
Right.
And governance is not a metric that Charity Intelligence reports on. Accountability to us is when you take the time to go through a charity's annual report or the information on its website. Is there enough information there for a donor to make an informed and intelligent giving decision?
So is there enough, so you don't comment on governance at all with your clients?
We will do it in due diligence, but it's not one of the metrics in our rating.
Regardless of the metrics, would you consider it normal to have that kind of turnover within a board prior to a major project like this?
When the information came out in late June and was confirmed through our discussions with We Charity Management in July, our concerns led to us issuing a donor advisory, which is our most serious red flag.
That is a serious red flag. And it seems like a very basic level of due diligence, regardless of whether you're looking at it from a financial perspective or for a government perspective. This is something that you knew, that you identified in 2 days, and yet our government failed to do.
But that information only came to light after the contract was signed, almost after the contract was canceled. That only came to light in late June.
But the transitions happened before that.
So that's the question of, is a charity under an obligation to inform a funder or the government in this case when you're doing a serious deal of this size? Is the obligation to be full and frank disclosure?
And would you comment that it is or it is not?
I believe it should be. But the question is, does the government have to ask? Or does the government or does a charity have to freely disclose such material information?
Well, I think if it's
Thank you
full
very
and
much.
frank, then the answer would be yes.
Thank you very much. We'll now go to our 5-minute round of questions, starting with Mrs. Block.
I can let Greg take a turn.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I do want to thank our witnesses for joining us today. I appreciate the testimony we've heard so far, and just want to follow up on some of the previous questions. A number of questions have been raised, and this is for Charity Intelligence. A number of questions have been raised by the Byzantine nature of the WE network of charities and for-profit ventures. Is this type of convoluted network common in the charity world?
No, it's not. It's not common. I mean, we often, if we're analyzing a charity, we'll often have to look at. Usually, we look at one set of financial statements and one organization. We will often look at two. If they have a foundation that's associated with an operating charity, or if there's a national charity that's associated with provincial charity, there might be two. The odd time we'll see three. In the case of We Charity, at this point we've got, I think, 13 related parties in North America that we would have to at least have an understanding of as we write up our analysis. So We Charity is not typical of charities in Canada.
Okay, thank you for that. Again, Charity Intelligence, you have publicly asked why Craig and Mark Kielberger are listed as co-founders of We, rather than as directors, officers, or trustees. Can you just provide an explanation as to why that question is important, especially as it relates to the CSSG contract?
So if you are on the board of directors or if you are an executive of a charity, any financial transactions that take place between you and the charity have to be fully disclosed in the audited financial statements. As a co-founder or a founder, there's no fiduciary responsibility, there's no executive responsibility, and so that just led us to the question of why Mark and Craig, who seemingly have an awful lot of executive power in the We organization, are neither executives nor on the board of directors.
Okay, thank you. And I'm not sure how much time I have, but finally, Mark Bloomberg was quoted in a Globe and Mail article on August 1st. He's a lawyer whose specialty is in the charitable sector, and he said this regarding We Charity. It's not, and I quote, "It's not like any charity that I've ever seen, so I wouldn't draw too many conclusions about the charity sector from this group. But I think what makes it clear to me is that we need more transparency in the charity sector." And I think we've been hearing that a little bit, certainly just in response to some of the questions by Mr. Green. There was this back and forth about full and frank disclosure, whether a government needs to ask or an entity who's seeking to have an organization oversee a contract on their behalf, whether or not there is that full and frank disclosure, or whether that the government would have needed to ask. And so I guess I'm wondering, can you comment on Mr. Bloomberg's conclusion that there is more transparency needed in the charity sector, and quite frankly on the process of governments, what they can rightly expect from a charity? If they
Can I answer this one?
Yes.
Greg, do you mind if I take this one? This is my passion. We've been championing for financial transparency since the very, very beginning. And I want to say we still face this battle. This summer alone, we have over 100 requests for information, and with the Charities Directorate, we're looking at some of Canada's largest charities with over $5 to $10 million in donations, who still refuse to put their audited financial statements up on their website. And so we have to go through that process of filing with the CRA, and it will take 8 to 9 months before we get that relevant information. But We Charity was financially transparent. It had its audited financial statements on its website. So we need to push for more financial transparency. But I also believe that people who have a fiduciary responsibility in writing checks with other people's money need to do their homework. And the audited financial statements were right there on the website. And I appreciate that the vast majority of giving is marketing and branding and who's doing the ask. But at the end of the day, we just are such believers in due diligence. So I hope all donors start reading the fine print.
Thank you very much. We'll now go for 5 minutes to Mr. McKinnon.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Just a quick question for you, Ms. Bain. You seem a little exasperated that perhaps some of my colleagues here or others seem to be putting words in your mouth. I think we can all agree that financial accountability, transparency in the charitable sector is a desired outcome, and having knowledgeable donors is clearly an objective of yours and a passion, and one that we should all share. But I do sense that you're a little exasperated that people are trying to put words in your mouth. Is that true?
Maybe more terrified about the defamation suits down the road. So I think we need to be very careful and very precise in the language we use, and what we have reported and what we have not commented on.
Well, that's a very good segue to my question for Ms. Pico. The opposition, I think, are responsible for your presence here today. Why do you think the opposition, the Conservatives, asked you to testify before us today? You're on mute.
I got an email on Monday asking me to come to the committee and testify. I was surprised. I asked, who would do that? And I only know now that it was the opposition. So possibly the opposition, because I've been critical. And I, as Kate Bain believes too, I have been vocal and critical about how the charity sector carries out its business for the past decade. And the full title of my book in 2017 was Cap in Hand: How Charities Are Failing the People of Canada and the World. So there is a lot of, and Kate and I, although I don't put as much focus on financial measurements as Charity Intelligence does, we both believe that impact, it's really important to gauge impact in charities. And there are a lot of charities in Canada that don't give the taxpayer a very good bang for their buck. And you can talk about donors, but taxpayers are basically fund charities more than anybody else. So perhaps they thought that I would automatically take a negative approach to we. But the point of the matter is that when the bureaucrats were trying to deliver and make this program in an emergency setting, this program was endorsed by TELUS. They had bank executives. The Globe and Mail was their media sponsor. They had stars. The cream of the Canadian crop was identified with we. So if I was a bureaucrat looking at an organization, I would say, well, hell, the committee who hands out Orders of Canada thought they were okay. You know, the executive vice presidents of the Royal Bank think they're fine. You know, TELUS thinks they're great.
I'm reminded, Ms. Pico, in your testimony, in your answer, you know, that old story about it takes a carpenter to build a house, but any old ass can kick one down.
Well, yeah. And so my concern, and it's real, about the damage that this is doing to other charities. And I ask, whether you're in government or you're in the opposition, is to stop for a second. You know, I looked at the newspaper yesterday and saw that the Bloc was on its way to try to deal with the snap election. And I think, oh man, that's all we need. I think the government, and I'm not a liberal, I'm not an NDP, I'm not a partisan person, but I think they were dealing with the best information they had at the time. And the point is that the elite of Canada are the ones that vetted we, right? So ask, you know, bring in the senior vice president of the Royal Bank of Canada and ask him as a board member, what he thought was so great about the organization.
Well, le Bloc québécois, malheureusement.
Unfortunately, the Bloc will not contribute to the end of the pandemic, are more concerned with their election chances. My last question for you, Ms. Picot. There's a Conservative MP who asked for Revenue Canada to investigate some charities, including we. What do you think of these investigations asked for by politicians? What do you think of this request?
Probably quite a lot to offer in your answer, but unfortunately we're completely out of time. We only had 5 minutes. I would, however, ask you and encourage you, Madam, if you could give your complete answer in writing to our clerk so that it can become part of the official record of this committee, and it will be distributed to all members of our committee as soon as you respond. We will now go to Mr. McCauley for 5 minutes, please.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, witnesses. I will note you talked about the, Madame Picot, the elite such as TELUS and everyone supporting them. TELUS, Royal Bank, and all those people, when they found out really what the situation was, have dropped their sponsorship and support of we. So I don't think that's a great example to say, well, because these guys made a mistake, it's wonderful the government made a mistake as well. I wanted to follow up as well, Mr. My colleague, Mr. Green's comment in the answer back about the obligation for we to be open about some of those financial issues and that. It's actually, believe it or not, the Treasury Board Secretariat, it's right in their framework. It's not as much on we to bring forward all the faults around their financial problems. It's actually part of Treasury Board's mandate to have asked these questions. So I just want to make a comment on those. For Ms. Bayan, and I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name wrong, and Mr. Thompson, is there any other further research that you've had that perhaps you want to bring to light since your last appearance?
I haven't done anything.
No? Okay.
Greg,
no, in the past week, we have not done any further research on we.
I just would actually add to that, actually, the impact numbers are being updated. There's been new information disclosed about some of its impact that just literally came in 2 hours ago.
Yeah, we haven't released any new information.
Yeah.
Are you ready to talk about it now or minor?
No,
that's fair enough.
It's literally just hit the desk.
Yeah, I want to ask you your experience around, again, it's about the transparency and how things are set up within charities. One of the issues when we had the brothers appeared before, they were talking about, the government forced them to set up basically a shell company to hold all the liability. All the liability every step of the way. The liability they talked about, and it's in the contract, is a standard government liability clause that goes into every single contract. We've actually heard in this very committee problems with small and medium enterprises about the liability they have to take on. You sell $10 worth of toilet paper, you have this unlimited liability clause. The brothers explained they created a shell company to receive all this money because of supposedly this liability. I used to be head of a hospital foundation for 6 hospitals for seniors. Whenever we received a penny from the government, and it was quite often, we didn't go out and set up separate shell companies to receive the money. Are you familiar with this as a standard operating practice of the charities you deal with, that every time they get a grant or contribution, they go out and set up a separate program, or sorry, a separate shell company?
Special purpose entities have been used in corporations and in real estate. I have never seen them used to anything like this extent in charities. And unfortunately, with the state of affairs right now, I do believe fact checking is really important. I know that as humans, we default to trust, but I think right now we just need to go back over everything dot the I's and cross the T's.
Yeah, it's funny you should make that comment because if you look at, again, the Treasury Board regulations, mounds, pages and pages and pages go over and cover every single one of these possible things. They just seem to have been missed altogether. Mr. Thompson, are you familiar with any charities that have set that up? And again, our hospital foundation, we actually built a hospital with provincial government money. We didn't set up an own separate shell company, for lack of better words. Are you familiar with any?
No, I mean, just a brief correction. They had We Charity Foundation already set up. They didn't set it up specifically for this purpose. They changed the purposes of the foundation to.
Have you seen anyone change the purpose of a foundation to do it?
That's right. But no, I've never seen this in the charitable sector either.
I think what's actually more interesting on that was that listening to Michelle Douglas's testimony, the board had actually said no to setting up the foundation. And yet when you look at the registration date, it was established on January 1st, 2019. So the board was not even aware or had approved the establishment of We Charity Foundation.
That's very strange. How much time, Mr. Chair?
We have no time left, Mr. McCauley, unfortunately.
I would just say, just very quickly, Ms. Ban, I appreciate your love of transparency. We should steal you for Treasury Board President, perhaps.
We will now go to Mr. Drouin for 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank all the witnesses who are before us today. And I know for some of you, it's your second appearance in front of a parliamentary committee on the same subject. And I'll divert a little bit to another line of questioning. And I think if you have this platform, and Ms. Bam, you've touched on it, you've said that the charitable sector is in, I don't want to say dire straits, but obviously they've with COVID-19, they too are suffering. And you've talked about the disbursement quota. Can you elaborate on this and how this could help the charitable sector?
God bless. I've got my computer back again. Yes. Over the last 15 years, foundations, community foundations, private foundations, they have their assets, and these have already been tax receipted. And with the stock market gains over the last 15 years, these assets have been able to grow in excess of 8% each year. Of that growth of 8% each year, foundations are only required to pay out 3.5% to frontline charities. So that's the disbursement quota. So with the growth over the last 15 years, foundations, community foundations, private foundations are now sitting on an estimated $110 billion. And that's already been tax receipted. And when we talk about changing the disbursement quota from that 3.5% to 5%, we're only talking about 1.5%. And that might seem really small, but mathematically, it's 43%. So by changing the disbursement quota from 3.5% to 5%, the community foundations, the private foundations will now have to open up and disperse 5% a year. They've got the balance sheets to do that. So the charity sector needs that cash right now. And by just changing that from 3.5 to 5%, maybe just for the COVID period, would be a tremendous benefit.
And is that something that you're hearing from other charities on this particular disbursement quota, from going from 3.5 to 5%? Or is this something that you came up with yourself? Or
There's a band of renegades who've just been looking at this going, this is insanity. Canada has the lowest disbursement quota in the world. And people always say, well, we need to save money up for a rainy day. And we're looking out the window and it's pouring and still not dispersing. Gail's actually the better. So I'm working in it from Please Foundation, Step Up Now. Of the over 2,000 private foundations in Canada that have more than $1 million in assets, only 20 have stepped up to increase they're giving to 5%. So I had hoped it would be voluntary. That's not what we're seeing. But Gail's written about the disbursement quota from a charity side.
Gail, do you want to add anything, or Ms. Pico? You're on mute.
Okay. When it comes to talking about charity transparency, and Kate and I are both in agreement on this, there's the charities that deliver programming, like World Vision or Oxfam. They're out there in the field, they're spending money, whether they're having impact or not, they're out there spending money. There's also a group of charities, private foundations, community foundations, and hospital foundations that are holding on to tens of billions of dollars. The 10 biggest private foundations in Canada are sitting on assets of $32 billion. And by increasing the disbursement quota, Kate argues for 5, I argue for 10, but that money is sitting there, and it will not be, private foundations are not willingly going to increase that disbursement quota. They've shown that. That is something that's going to have to be regulated. And we did calculations at the charity report that if we raised the disbursement quota to foundations to 10% for 3 years as part of an emergency response to COVID, we would generate $14 billion from 20 of the largest private foundations in Canada. So that when we're talking about transparency, we need to be talking about the foundations that are sitting on tens of billions of dollars. This also comes to light when we're talking about donor advised funds, where there's no disbursement quota required at all.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry, again, my apologies for cutting you off, but we do have a fairly tight timeline to deal with. Yes. We'll now go to our final interventions, which will be 2.5 minutes each, starting with Madame Vignola.
Oui, merci beaucoup.
Yes, thank you very much. The agreement was made on May 5, 2020, and it was made with the which has absolutely no money. No, so it's very hard to see that We Charity Foundation is the only organization capable of managing a bursary program or the service grant program and the disbursement of all this money.
Is that a question for me? Since I said that I thought that it actually at the time, it didn't seem to me to be an unreasonable conclusion that at that time in this process, prior to all of this other stuff coming out about that and We actually also operates its Days in Montreal, in Mount Saint Denis for the last few years. They have rallies and so on in Montreal. But at the time, looking at the facts at that time, it doesn't make as little sense as it does now. Like, a lot has been brought to the table. I don't recall any other charity in Canada that's been put under the microscope more than this particular charity, other than the Canadian Red Cross during the tainted blood scandal. So we learn a lot about charities when we put one under the microscope. But this charity, I think, was...
La question est vraiment...
Yes, but the question is, how can we use how can we have an agreement of $900 million without an agreement with an agreement with a company which has absolutely no assets, and show that this organization can administer a program of $900 in grants.
And our questioning there, but for any one of our witnesses who wishes to respond to Madame Vignola's question, once again, I would ask that you respond in writing to our clerk. Our final intervention for 2.5 minutes will go to Mr. Green. Mr. Green.
Hello? Thank you. Ms. Pico, do you believe that nonprofit and charitable sector staff deserve a minimum wage?
Yes.
Do you believe that people volunteer under duress?
Not particularly, no.
Would you not agree that COVID in this situation is a situation of duress?
Let me tell you about the people that I know who were applying to that program. They were the people, 15 young people who were mentoring young students in the neighborhood of Jane and Finch, which is one of the least livable neighborhoods in Toronto, were among the people who applied for that money.
Ms. Pico, so they're people who either need the money or they don't. If they need the money, they're under duress. If they don't need the money, then they don't frankly need that employment. You know, when you speak about the elite of Canada, you're quite right. This whole program was about the elite. This was about the ultra elite of this country having access to other powerful people. You framed it actually quite right. And what I find disconcerting is this idea somehow that this savior complex of the charitable sector that goes into inner city racialized communities, having an event at a school, okay, in Montreal is very different than having the relationships within the community to be able to partner the students to these events. And if I recall, Ms. Pico, you yourself raised questions about their ability to match the students, the 35,000 students, to the organizations that would be required to actually do this program. Do you still stand by the fact that charitable work and nonprofit work is essentially a relationship and not a transaction?
I think that using schools to access racialized communities, it makes sense.
Is that the same way, though, in terms of the organizations that surround the school? It's one thing to have a relationship with a principal. It's another thing to have a relationship with the nonprofit community sectors that are actually rooted in those communities.
And very briefly.
Point of order, Mr. Chair. Point of order.
Yes, please go ahead, Mr. McKinnon.
Well, I just find that on a few occasions today, we're having witnesses, you know, borderline badgered, asked a question and then told what their answer is. And I think it must be an incredibly frustrating experience for experts like the ones we have before us to come before our committee today to give us their considered and expert opinion and then be lectured at it what their opinion should be. I just find that very aggravating.
Thank you for your commentary. And as you know, as your chair, I pay very close attention to the testimony given and to the questions asked. I've always insisted that all committee members treat all of our witnesses with the utmost of respect, and that, of course, is reciprocal. I know that the questions in some cases were very pointed, but I did not find anyone on this committee to be, in my opinion at least, Mr. McKinnon, to be badgering a witness. I found, frankly, the witnesses are well prepared and extremely knowledgeable and, quite frankly, can handle themselves without your assistance, but that's, again, only my opinion. But the reality is that we are completely out of time, regardless of whether we want this discussion to go forward or not. We are out of time. However, given the fact that Mr. Green has posed a number of scenarios which witnesses did not have an opportunity to respond to, I would ask that they do so again in writing.
Mr.
Green,
Chair,
I see your hand up, Mr. Green. We'll go to your final point.
If you can, through you to the clerk, as a point of privilege would be an example of when my abilities to function as an MP are being disrupted or interrupted or in fact obstructed. Is that correct?
It is, Mr. McKinnon.
Okay. I need to state for the record, Mr. Chair, this is now my 5th meeting. And the Liberal members of every committee that I've been on have used points of order to disrupt my interventions to the point where he cut off 20 seconds of the last part of my question. And I want to go on the record to state that this is not the way that these committees should be operating, and I hope that they cease this.
Thank you for your comments. I will point out one point of clarification. You did not have 20 seconds left. You had a few seconds left, but I appreciate your comments. And again, I, as chair, have been paying extremely close attention to all testimony. And when time to time I need to intervene, I will. But I give most committee members a fair amount of latitude because I respect the members of this committee. However, with that, we are completely out of time. I would like to thank all of our witnesses who have appeared before us today. If you have additional testimony that you think would be beneficial and instructive to our committee, please submit those to our clerk as quickly as possible, and you are excused. Colleagues, I will not be suspending.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. That was a very well-run meeting.
Thank you all. Very enlightening
It's nothing
comments.
like finance. Don't worry. You guys are well behaved.